of truth. Usually I do these on Anchor FM. They're normally podcasts, but I thought, and then I usually upload them on YouTube. So I thought I would actually do one here. The only thing is that I can't see any chat, so I'll just find it on here. This will be interesting to see whether I can actually find this on the live page. I'm typing on my iPad if you're just wondering. Let's do live and let's see if it finds it. Oh, it does. Okay, so I'm just going to turn the sound down and then I'll be able to see the chat. This is not going to be that long. Well, I thought I'd be able to see the chat, but I can't. Oh, I can see the chat there. Yeah, okay. If anyone does come on, I hope that doesn't run out. I'll say sign in. I hope they do come on. If they do. So, first thing I wanted to talk about was Alfie Evans. That was the thing that I was talking about previously. And obviously an update, which is that the child's passed away. There's a petition on change.org, which I've filled out, and I would suggest that other people look at that. That's to do with changing the law that parents should be the ones who are responsible for their child. The thing is, I understand why the state and why the hospital have some say over it, in the sense that obviously if someone was going to endanger their child, then the state has to step in to protect. But in the sense of this, where the parents have proved themselves to be proper parents, they were the ones who brought them there to the hospital in the first place, and they were seeking further treatment in Italy. Now, obviously they could argue that, oh, is it going to be cruel to keep this child alive longer? But is that the real reason why hospitals do switch off children? Is it also to do with the money aspect of things? I think that plays a big part into it as well. I know, obviously, you can't keep someone on life support forever, but if someone else offers to do it, and that hospital is, the equivalent of an NHS hospital, I don't know what that would be these days, then I don't see the reason why, if the parents wish to do it, why it would be a problem. The thing is where I'm coming from is that if the state gets to choose what happens to our children, then are we prisoners? Are we really free? Because, if you bring a child normally, then you can take it away whenever you like. Why is it whenever there's a situation like this, like Charlie Gard, and what was the other one? The one that took the child to America. They performed the treatment there. That child's still alive. We know the NHS and every hospital makes mistakes. We know that things, all hospitals have different treatments depending where they are, depending on the money that they spend on it. We know that the NHS, there's certain things they won't pay for. Like in that case of that child whose name I've forgotten, is a reason to move the child. So if I don't understand it, why our rights, our power is taken away, why they become the one who chooses. If you think about it, you brought up the child, it's your child, you took it to the hospital, and then suddenly, from the moment that something catastrophic happens to your child, suddenly then you are not allowed to just take your child away. You have to ask other people to be able to take your own child away. And I mean, how is that making any sense? I mean, if you were doing something wrong, or if you weren't a capable adult, if there was something wrong with you, if you were, I suppose you could question whether that is still, I understand from that point of view, say if there was an abusive parent and that was why the child had ended up in that state, you could understand why they would, take over control. But I think if the parents prove themselves, if they don't, like in a normal case where they have to take children away from people, they have to deem that the parents are unsuitable. If that is not the case, if that's not done at the hospital level, then I think that the parents should be able to do whatever they like with the child, as long as they're not causing the child any suffering. Now that's the big question, and that's maybe why courts and hospitals do say no to parents, but if how can they say the child would have suffered more in the sense that the child would have been transported by a military plane, which is better than any transport that you could, if they were going to transport him back to his house, his home, or a hospice, that would have been some grotty old NHS ambulance, whereas this would have been a military plane, so that's quicker and probably smoother journey anyway. It would have been on life support, I assume, so it would have been exactly the same circumstances. There wouldn't have been any more suffering to that child. That child then would have been in Italy, and then either that child would have had some different treatment that they don't have here, or a treatment that they know about but they don't think that, because that's a lot of the time the problem is they say that these treatments, they don't have enough data on them, and so therefore there might not be a better it might cure that person, but it's just that the NHS can't afford to pay for it because they don't see good results on it. But if you're a parent, then you want to train. If someone is offering you, free treatment and they're going to do it, then I don't see why anyone should be able to come in front of you. I mean, are we prisoners or we're free? Because, and I think this is the big thing, and this is why I hope that with this change.org petition, with these people outside Alderhay that were protesting, that they don't stop now that the child has passed away, that they continue, because it's going to happen again. Let's now petition, let's now get this law changed that puts us, the parents, in control of our own children and stops us from being prisoners in our own country, because that's all we are. If we lose our power, well, why do we lose our power? This is the thing, and this goes into other aspects that I've learned since opening my mind to a lot of these things. Not that my mind was ever that closed. I was always quite open to things. The iPad's about to run out of battery, hopefully. Well, no one's chatting at the moment, so I can't see anything, so I guess no one is. Yeah, with flat earth and things, it's made me aware of this idea of power, and that we've given it away. Why is it? I was watching this film. Oh God, no! I've got to try and remember the name of this film. It was Backstabbing for Beginners. It's a great film. It was. I don't know how factually true it is, because that's a problem with movies. If you've ever seen any more My Pursuits of Truth, you'll know that I've often questioned a lot of these things about the historical accuracies of these movies. But if it is accurate, and it was about the Iraq, the second Iraq War, and it was about the UN, and it was about corruption and all that kind of stuff. And there's a scene where the main character in it gets detained at the airport, and he's sitting in front of another man, and he's not allowed to go wherever he wants to go. And I'm thinking to myself, well, why does the man in front of him have more power than him? What makes him have more power? We're all meant to be born equal. We're all meant to treat each other equally. So how is it some people are more powerful than others? Because intrinsically, no one is more powerful than anyone else. We're all exactly the same. So why do we give other people power over us? Why have we allowed this? I mean, I know primarily it's not us, it's those people that came before us, and we, like sheep, are just continuing to follow these things that may have come from like hundreds of years ago. This idea of law courts and politicians and governments and etc., which we've seen time and time again, especially even in my lifetime, them lie. And you've only got to look at the Windrush scandal, which I've covered as well on this, that the way that they lie, the way that they refuse to answer questions that are put to them, not only by us, because we hardly are ever able to ask them anything, but by their own fellow politicians. They won't even answer questions to them. When you had that Yvette Cooper in the select committee talking to Amber Rudd, and you couldn't get a straight answer out of her. It was just statement after statement, and we allow them to get away with this, and yet we're paying for this. And I think that's the thing. When you start to look at all these things, and I don't know, I can't say with certainty that the things that I see are truthful or not. That's what I've come to the conclusion of. Whether it's flat earth, whether it's false flags, whether it's 9/11, whether it's Sandy Hook, whether it's 7/7, whether it's, whatever the issue is. I am unable to know who's telling the truth anymore because I've opened my mind and I can see that there are things that don't make sense. Um, and that can come from either side. That can come from the official side, if you want to call it that, which is the media, which is journalists, which is the state, the government, the countries, the powerful, whoever they are, the general consensus that everyone believes. There's lots of things that don't make sense, and then there's people who claim the conspiracies. I don't like using that word, but the people who question those things. There's things that also don't make sense there. But the fact is, the problem is what when your mind is open to flat Earth and 9/11 and all these things, you then are unable to believe anyone because you don't know unless you personally see it yourself who's telling the truth anymore. The way that the protesters were described as anarchists, the way that they were, I think they were talking about pro-Christian lobbies and how. All right, so I'm back. I've lost my train of thought now. Yeah, so I'm not claiming to say that I know any of the things that I talk about are accurate or not. Um, all I'm saying is these are what I can see. Like with flat Earth, there is the curvature. I mean, I never thought about these things before. That where I've never seen curvature, and now coming to see things, like shots where it's using a GoPro camera, where it's using uh, a fisheye lens that would bend, and you can see the bend going this way, you can see the bend going that way, and yeah, this is used as evidence. And the other thing is obviously the famous evidence that people use, which I'm still surprised that people still use it despite knowing that it doesn't work anymore, which is ships going over the curvature, which I mean in 2018 I'm still hearing that where people will say that if you look out and you'll see a ship, you'll see it, the bottom go first and the top, or whichever way it is, and that's because it's going around the curve. And obviously now that we've got binoculars and cameras and telescopes, we can zoom in and it is back there again. It never went round that corner. It's just our eyes can't see round that corner. So everyone must surely acknowledge that now, and yet you still hear people using that as a proof that there is curvature, forgetting that what about the curvature of the other way? Because this is a ball, it should be curving everywhere. And you would have thought, that someone would have got a photo without using a fisheye lens. I mean, that is really, it really makes me question things when I see all this stuff and it's fisheye lens. I mean, why, knowing what a fisheye lens does, why would you take a picture of that unless you want to create a curve? It's not the most accurate way to. I mean, I understand the reason they're probably going to say they use it is so they can get more of the landscape in, but it interferes with the picture. So anyway, what I'm trying to say is that I don't know whether it is difficult to know who's telling the truth or not, because what I'm finding is that you can get experts, Brian Cox, whoever, saying one thing, and then you can get someone else, and I'm going to say this on YouTube, who says another thing that makes sense and goes against it. And I know that everyone's screaming now will be saying, well, how can you believe someone on YouTube, as if somehow someone on television or Brian Cox somehow is more intelligent than anyone else. Common sense, that can come from anyone. And I know, yeah, he's gone through science, but I can see other scientists, like if you watch Beyond the Imaginary Curve, I've forgotten his name as well now. He talks, he's has a similar kind of qualification. We has a qualification, and he is able, if he suddenly talked about the Earth being round, everyone would say, yeah, that's fine, But the minute someone says something that you don't like, then suddenly, oh no, we can't trust him because he's on YouTube. I don't think it works like that. If something doesn't make sense, it doesn't make sense. Yeah, sometimes you can say, well, it's maybe because we can't grasp it because of education problems, if you want to put it politely. But what I'm seeing is even like with 9/11, when you get the idea of the planes flying through the building, all three of those buildings coming down at the same amount, um, it just seems so, impossible that three buildings could fall down exactly the same way. And not only fall down exactly the same way, but also all three of them fall down very, very quickly, which is unusual for any buildings with fire in them. You only got to look at Grenfell to see that. It's a recent example. It didn't fall down. No one stopped the firemen going in saying, "Oh, stop, stop, don't go in because it's going to fall down in like 45 minutes." Um, so not only that, and also the way that they all fell down in their own imprint, without any noticeable resistance, at speeds that seem to suggest free fall. All three of them. Two were hit by planes, one was hit by nothing. How is it all three of them could do all those things? Now, you'll get people who, on the media, journalists or whatever, who, will tell you this and you'll believe them. But then you'll get people on YouTube that will say the things I'm saying, and then, then who do you believe then? You're going to say, well, no, you can't believe me because I'm on YouTube. What do I know? Well, wait a minute. What's a journalist? I mean, I could be a journalist, and it's not exactly, I was going to say rocket science. It's not exactly a high skill, educated job. But if you toe the line, then people believe you. It's a problem of people being able to actually look at things, whether they make sense or not. And yeah, you could say, okay, maybe those buildings all could have come down in that way, but what are the odds of all three buildings having different circumstances coming down in those same manner? So whatever, even if you look at general things, like this story about the boy, the Windrush scandal, the Syrian nerve agent, the Salisbury nerve agent, false flag, Mandalay Bay, whatever you look at, there is so much that doesn't make sense. You even got to see, like, in the reporting, when the reporting is done from that side of things, when, 1 minute they say one thing, if you hear the beginning of an event and then you hear it at the end, there's so many factual errors between the two of them. Why does that happen when the news is meant to be factual? They shouldn't be making things up, should they? They're not making things up. No, they're not making things up. They're just not checking things. I mean, how are we meant to believe people who will just report something and then, half an hour later that will be an inaccurate statement? So we shouldn't treat them with validity, but we do. Well, there doesn't seem to be anyone coming at the moment, but I've nearly run out of things to say. But that's what the way I think at the moment, that I can't say 100% either way on all of these things, really. My mind is open to both sides, and my problem is I don't know who to trust. But I trust those who are telling me the opposite to the official story more, because those people come across more sincere to me, and what they say fits with common sense, whereas those that are part of the official story, which to a larger degree, I mean, I was going to say the government, the state, but it isn't really. The official story is often carried by the media, unfortunately, whichever way you want to look at it. And I know people are going to say, oh, why do people always bash the media? But that is where we get our official stories from. Where do we know what happened in 9/11? That was, for me, it was on BBC. Where do I know what happened for the Salisbury nerve agent? That was Sky News. So I didn't get my facts from anyone else. I didn't get my facts from an MP. I didn't get my facts from a school teacher or a person out on the street or a work colleague. I got all of the stuff that I've been talking from the television, from the internet, from their websites, from their newspapers. So they're the ones that carry the official story. And it is always interesting whenever you watch any news network. If you flick around, you'll notice that all of them, despite being owned by different people and different companies, they all seem to be telling almost the same stories at the same time, almost with the same words. which is very interesting, isn't it? Because if you had 100 witnesses and they all saw the same event and then they all went and did a YouTube video, well, I suppose that's different. Yeah, I mean, I suppose, yeah, you would get, because they were all witnessing the same thing, so they would all actually come up with the same thing. That wasn't a great analogy. What I was trying to say is that why is it there's so many stories in the world that there'd be certain stories that will be everywhere, say like 9/11. I mean, you're going to say, yeah, well, obviously it's going to be everywhere because it was a major story. But where do they all get that information from? Because not all of them have journalists or media representatives in those countries. Yeah, some of them will. A lot of this stuff is from news agencies, from Reuters and things like that. So they're giving out these stories to all these different news outlets. Some of them actually give them copy. So they're actually, that's why a lot of journalists, why if you flick channels, you'll notice that they're saying the same things, is because they're actually given copy from news agencies, and that, it's like a service that they do. So, but that's where things can be manipulated in the sense that you should be able to turn over different news networks, especially even like different countries, and be getting different stories. But you're not getting different stories. You're getting the same stories. You know, is very interesting, and obviously that is an easy way to manipulate people into believing the way they want to believe, whether it's malicious or not. That's, I suppose, it's up to everyone to decide. But yeah, that's the problem I have with the official stories of lots of these things. And often they will, it's like with this recent, the Russian alleged nerve agent in Syria, with this Hassan Diab boy, who claims that he was tricked into being down in that basement and he was offered food and this, that, and the other. And I don't think I've seen that very much on the media. I mean, I saw it on, where did I see it? Actually, I saw it on Sky News, but I didn't see it throughout the day again. And no one's talking about it now, as if oh, Russia just made that up. But this boy was actually in that video, that video that looks very suspicious. I mean, it looks like people were just being drenched with water. There doesn't seem to be. I mean, the thing is like I said before, this event, maybe it did happen, and maybe they staged part of it because they wanted to go on TV. And there's no way that they would show you pictures of people coughing up blood and struggling to die. They wouldn't be able to show that stuff, and then people wouldn't be able to get engaged in it, because the media censors, war and all this kind of stuff. It gets us to follow these things, but doesn't show us the real impact of these things. And the reason why they do that, obviously, is because if we actually saw what war was really like, we wouldn't all be, or some those people that do, wouldn't be, waving their flags, thinking that somehow it's patriotic to go around killing people, because anyone who's seen Platoon and films like that will see the aspect of what war is really like. And then when you actually see real footage of what war's like, and often you'll see this stuff on YouTube. Strangely, it doesn't get onto the BBC or Sky News or CNN. Well, I don't know. I don't watch. Obviously, I'm not in America, but of the stuff I've seen, they don't show people getting blown apart by bullets. They don't show people dying. I mean, movies. That's another one of these lies in plain sight. That movies will show death as being something that is instant, something that is quick, something that's painless. People get shot and they just die, that's it. Or they you can get punched in the head and they fall down unconscious. Whereas none of that's reality. But they don't show us that because they want us to follow, into these wars and back, these wars around the world and all these things. And so maybe that's why those events, if they did actually happen, that maybe that part of it was staged so that they would have something that they could show on television. But personally, from what I'm reading, these white helmets look very suspicious, and they have been investigated, I believe, for these things, staging things before. And I know there's that video of them doing, what do they call it? I've forgotten the name of it, when they were all like still, when they were trying to take someone out of the ground. I don't know whether that was real or not, what that was about, but they're funded by the West, so it would make sense, because like I said previously on these podcasts, that for any of these wars, they always need some kind of moral reason to be able to do them, because they can't, they don't want to look like the empires of the past that just would go in to countries and kill whoever they like and take over their countries and do whatever with the indigenous people. They don't want to look like that. So they can have the metaphoric white hat, the good guy. They have to have some kind of moral reason, i.e., like with if Iraq and Afghanistan, it was the Twin Towers, the 9/11 event. That was their, even though most of them, according to them, were Saudis, that allowed them to be able to go into Iraq and Afghanistan despite not having UN approval. But the people, most of them, backed that. That's the same reason why Trump and Theresa May and Macron were able to go into Syria, because of that event of children being part of this nerve agent. And I think in the UK, that was why the Salisbury nerve agent event took place as well. That was because of Iraq and Afghanistan. And most people now realise that we were lied to by Tony Blair and George W. Bush and those in power, that there were no weapons of mass destruction, and these invisible weapons of mass destruction that were supposed to hit us in 45 minutes, all this stuff was lies. And whether you want to play the game of the intelligence was wrong and they just made a mistake, and Tony Blair and George W. Bush didn't really know about that, and they just took those words, despite us all laughing when we heard 45 minutes. Now, though, most people who were believing in that realise that we were lied to. And I've forgotten what I was actually going to go and say then, but that without, Salisbury. So because of the way we've looked at these things, I think without the Salisbury nerve agent thing taking place, it wouldn't have allowed Theresa May to be able to go into Syria with Macron and Trump. So, because it made no sense why did, if it was the case, Russia poison this agent? It's been here for ages, and he was a double agent anyway. And why would they use such a crude way of killing someone when there's far more efficient, easier ways that I'm sure the British government and the American government, when they kill people around the world, they use. They're not sloppy like this. This looked like, it just wanted. Sorry, I was going to miss that. It just obviously wanted so that it would give Russia, and then obviously when this Syrian thing happened and it was connected with Russia as well, that gave the consensus people would back Theresa May despite the Iraq and Afghanistan lie, despite knowing that politicians do lie to us, because that event happened in our own home, as it were. That gave them the ability to join Trump and Macron and get away with this, despite they went in and they dropped bombs on sites, actually possibly with Russia's help, before the investigation has even taken place. The OPCW are looking at this stuff now, so they went in before it was. I mean, this is worse than, at least with Tony Blair and George W. Bush, they did have some kind of report, and despite it being a lie, before they went in and dropped bombs on another sovereign country. But of course, it's not a sovereign country anymore, because now, despite Assad being democratically elected, now he's no longer democratically elected. He's a regime leader. They're going to paint him much like, I'm sure, Saddam Hussein and Osama bin Laden and the Taliban and all the Libyan president. They're going to paint him in that way. Almost the same way in as George Orwell did in Big Brother in 1984 and Animal Farm. Having this enemy that is easy for us to hate. That I guess stems back. I don't know if it comes before that, but obviously I'm assuming it stems back to Hitler having this figure of hate, because once you have that one figure of hate, it's easy to get everyone to just join in. So they always have to have that nowadays. Anyway, I think that's enough. I hope you've enjoyed it. Check out my podcast, which I regularly put on Anchor FM, and then I upload them onto YouTube. I hope you've enjoyed. Thank you for listening. Please like, share, comment, whatever. I'd like to hear your views. And please check out my other YouTube videos, The Pursuit of the Truth. Take care, take it easy, God bless, and peace.